Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson.
Welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacy.
And I'm Phil Thompson. We are so glad you are spending a little bit of time with us today. We're a tech company. We are called JSL Solutions, and we have multiple products that we offer churches, ministries, and even some small businesses if you're interested. Those very quickly, those products would be
StreamingChurch.tv, ChurchAppLive.com, MyFlock.com, and Greeter.church.
All right, you'll just have to guess as to what all those do.
There you go.
Well, Steve and I have been doing this for many years, and when I'm talking about the business aspect, and even the podcast now, we've been doing this for a while. We've been in ministry for a long time, and we like to help churches. We like to, we're obviously a tech company, but we talk about lots of things from helping volunteers and enabling people in a positive way to do their ministry, help their church. But today we're going to stick to the subject of tech.
Yes. What are we talking about today?
Excuse me, I got to adjust this microphone. We're going to talk about live encoders.
All right.
So if this obviously, or may not be so obvious, depending on who you are, this involves streaming, live streaming, and which is one of our companies, StreamingChurch.tv. And so we get a lot of people asking us about, okay, I want to stream my church services. How do I do it? And we have lots of information on our website. But one of the things we talk about are live encoders.
Yes, software encoders.
Yeah, but there's hardware ones too that I don't think we'll have time to talk about the hardware ones today. But there are some ones out there that might suit your needs. But today we're going to talk about at least a couple different ones that are live software-based encoders. And I thought we would start by talking about OBS.
All right, let's do that. Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit. What is an encoder, and what does it do, and why do I need one?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, and now we'll let you answer it.
All right. So basically, to stream, you need a camera. You need a way to connect your camera up to your computer.
And when you say that, what you mean is you can't just plug your camera directly into a
right. You typically need a video capture device, which is we've dedicated other podcasts to that. And typically you hook it up to your computer, and then on your computer it needs to encode the video signal to send it to the streaming servers.
Right.
Hence the name an encoder. So it's a piece of software that runs on your computer. So there's several years ago, there was very few choices. Yeah. Today there's some more choices. So some free, some paid, some inexpensive, and some more expensive.
Right.
So we were going to start with the Open Broadcaster software. That's what it's called. OBS. It's actually the obsproject.com is where you get the software.
obsproject.com.
Yes.
It is actually free. Now, there are some live encoders out there that you buy. And by the way, people with doing church and streaming video, they're not the only ones interested in live encoders, by the way. There's gaming community out there, online gaming, that likes to use those. And OBS, I think, might have its roots in that.
Yes, I think that was the primary target was the people, and for those that are unaware, it was very surprising to me too, but people will watch for hours really high-level gamers play their games.
Yep. My son will do something like that.
Will he watch or will he broadcast?
Well, he'll watch. He's actually talked about broadcasting, but he's never done it. So I said, I'll help you set it up, but he never has as of right now. So
I guess you got to be a certain level gamer to be worthy of having people watch you play. So,
well, a lot of these guys make money too. These gamers, they make tons of money.
There's international superstars that make good money.
Yeah. Well, those are the guys that do it. When I say make tons of money, it's those guys, those several, whoever they are.
Yeah, making well over six-figure incomes.
Wow.
Playing games.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're talking live streaming. So OBS.
Yes.
So OBS has two different types of software encoders.
It does.
Yeah. There's the OBS Studio.
Oh, they've kind of changed over the years, though. They did have the classic and the studio.
Right.
I think they've dropped the one now and just have.
Oh, have they?
I think they only have the one now.
You're right. Yeah.
So
remind me to prepare for these podcasts in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
In the past, you could choose which version you wanted to install. And they had one that was kind of multi-platform and another one that was Windows-based, and they've moved, I think, all their development effort to the multi-platform one.
Yeah.
So, open broadcaster, meaning it's an open source product, which there are, I'm somewhat of a fan of some of the open source stuff, and there's pros and cons.
Some people are scared of open source.
Yes. And for certain things, especially Windows-based stuff, there's a reason to be. But for certain things like this, OBS is completely safe, completely continually updated, has a large community of developers behind it, but it's free. It's kind of the model of open source. So you can go to obsproject.com and download it. So, is OBS right for me?
That's the big question.
I don't know. And we're going to talk about a few other encoders as well, but let's talk more about OBS. And so, let's see. The primary, some of the key things about OBS. Number one, it's free, and you can download it, install it. The other thing that makes it very appealing is it runs on just about every computer platform that's out there. So whether you're Windows, Macs, Linux, or whatever, they have a version you can install.
Well, we've, years ago, we started doing this Flash Media Live Encoder, which we've talked about before, which has not been updated for, 7 years.
Probably, talk a little bit, because
if we can,
we still have
time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we've steered people towards vMix, which we've talked about before, and again, maybe in this podcast we'll get to vMix, but if you have a Mac, vMix has not yet come out with a Mac version.
Yeah, and
so
they don't hint at developing a Mac
version
not. Either.
I don't know why, but I guess not. I don't know. But so we've steered a lot of people to OBS that have Macs.
Right.
If you don't use Wirecast, or you don't want to spend money on Wirecast, which is another, again, if we get to it, we'll talk about Wirecast. So OBS is a great alternative, and we've messed around with it now for a couple years at least, and I think it's got a lot of positive things to it.
Yeah, I think it's coming along. So unlike Flash Media Live Encoder, which hasn't been touched in 8 years or so, this is every month or two you're getting updates for it. Yep. So it's getting better every.
I like OBS. There are some of our customers that may have a little bit older computers and may have maybe not quite the beefy computers. And OBS, the one thing I've noticed about OBS is it doesn't use a lot of resources on your computer. Your CPU doesn't go dramatically up like it might with vMix or Wirecast. Mm-hmm. So that's a positive side in the sense that, if you're doing some basic streaming, you're not doing a whole lot of different stuff, OBS might be right for you and your church.
Right. So some of the other things that kind of make OBS appealing, or on the brighter side, you have the capability for multiple inputs and switching between inputs.
Right.
They have a thing called a scene manager where you can kind of set up some scenes and
do transitions.
Yeah, and do transitions. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a lower third capability. Do you know?
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
You could certainly go back and forth between, for instance, if the pastor's speaking and he's reading a scripture, you could queue up that, you could set up some kind of a scene, so to speak,
right,
with the passage in it, and you could flip over to that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a lower third, but it would be, you could see it on the screen. You could, Psalms 48 or whatever, and you could read it as the pastor's reading it or whatever he's talking about, or even his notes, but you're not doing a lower third where you still see.
I wonder if, I bet you there's a way to do it though, where we can send both an image and the video to the stream at the same time, and I don't know.
Maybe one of our listeners knows.
Yeah, maybe.
Let us know.
Let us know. We've not played with that.
Yeah, maybe.
So let's see, on the positive side, other features that OBS is going to provide you that we may or may not have talked about. The setup is pretty easy. StreamingChurch.tv is not a preset on OBS, but the setup is pretty easy, and we've got good instructions. It typically interfaces with a lot of different hardware items, so that's typically not an issue. One of the constraints would be that if you want to stream to multiple sources, which a lot of churches now are interested to streaming to their streaming provider and to Facebook or some other place at the same time.
Right.
OBS is limited to one destination per streaming session.
Yeah. So if you're trying to do adaptive bit rate or those things you just mentioned, you're not going to do that. No, and by the way, when we just mentioned lower thirds, there are some plugins that different people, because it's an open source community, there are different people developing different types of what you would call plugins. And there actually is somebody that's working on a lower third plugin for OBS. So maybe by the time, it may already be out. I'm just looking here online because we're kind of flying off the seat of our pants here on this podcast. Not that we don't normally do that, but so there is some options out there.
Yeah, Google OBS plugins, and it will show you. There's a page that has a link of all the different plugins.
Yeah, so there's some options there, and again, that's a positive thing for OBS is there's other people developing things.
Right.
So who knows? By the time this podcast come out, there may be some other things that we'll do. Because there's people working at it. So, yeah, definitely good. And they have, when it comes to support, what I'm sure a lot of our listeners, if you're involved in any of the tech world, will find, and you have, and I have, and sometimes it's really hard to find support. But there are forums out there, and OBS has their own forum.
Right.
So, you're not totally in the dark.
Right, and there'll be, and you
have
can
to
either
sort.
you may need to search through the forums or post to a forum if you're having a particular issue, which is better than Adobe's Flash Media Live Encoder, which they no longer support since 2009.
They don't care. They don't care. But so it's definitely it definitely has, I think, a lot of potential. And again, you're not paying for it, so if it's something that would suit your needs. It would be good,
Right. So if you're a ministry that's sending to just one destination, you're not doing adaptive bit rate. You can do video switching, but this would be a good choice, right?
I think so. I think it would definitely be a good choice.
Yeah.
And again, we have some customers in foreign countries too that may not have the beefiest computers in the world and may be limited on some of their their options and their tools, and so again it's definitely something
it's a very efficient encoder.
Absolutely. All right, so shall we move on to a different encoder?
Yeah, so that would be one option. That would be a free option.
So since we're talking free, should we just move on to vMix?
vMix is free. We can go on to vMix, but vMix has both a paid version or paid versions, and a free version.
Right. Yeah.
And they also have a free 60-day trial for their paid version.
Right.
So, vMix has worked out really well for a lot of people. They've been very impressed with it. It seems to be pretty intuitive on how to set up and use. And again, we are a preset with vMix, so the setup is actually even easier than it is with OBS because you just put in a username and password. And
you would find us from a list.
Yeah, you choose our destination on the list and put in a username and password. Mm-hmm. So vMix, as we mentioned, there's a free version, there's a free trial, and then there's some paid versions. There's some really high-end or more expensive paid versions, but for ministry, their lowest tier one is probably all you will ever need, unless you're running a production TV studio and need need some of these other features, but they have a one-time license, which is also very nice.
Yeah.
Like OBS, vMix is continually updated, so probably every month or so there's an update that's going out to vMix, so it's supported and
right. They're based out of Australia, I think.
Yeah. I think so. vMix is going to be limited to the PC.
Yes.
And I would consider vMix and Wirecast to be primary competitors as far as capability goes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Wirecast has been around a lot longer than vMix, but vMix has come on really strong over the past few years. There's another encoder we're not going to talk about that has been out there probably longer than vMix, but really hasn't gained the foothold that vMix has gotten with the community.
Which one are we not going to talk about?
That would be VidBlaster.
Oh,
remember
right.
VidBlaster?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fooled around with VidBlaster years ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Similar, very capable, but... Yeah. So let's see. What can we do with vMix? So vMix is going to bring in the arena where you can have multiple destinations.
Right.
So you can either send out multiple streams to your service provider with adaptive bitrate, or you can send to multiple just different locations.
Right. Yeah, you could go to Facebook at the same time you're streaming.
Right.
And YouTube.
Yeah, and YouTube. It's going to have similar capabilities in that you can have multiple cameras, and with OBS and vMix and all these encoders, you can choose either image sources or video sources, and you can set up playlists and loops. I know we've had some 24/7 broadcasters that use vMix where they'll go in and say, I'm going to run these 12 videos in order,
right? And
then when they get to the end, let's loop back to the first one.
Yeah.
And so vMix will allow you to do that, and I believe OBS will allow you to do that as well.
I'm just looking at their website here. They do have a lot of things very similar to Wirecast. I mean, you can obviously lots of transition effects.
Yes.
You can do. They claim that you can do professional HD production on a modest PC. I don't know what I do know what their definition of modest is, but this is kind of getting into the cons area. I have noticed that some of our customers that streamed for years with Flash, Media Live Encoder, and then decided to go to vMix, did have a few problems where their computer just didn't have enough resources to handle that.
So the CPU is getting overloaded. And I think in all three of these encoders we might be talking about here, they have good bandwidth meters and CPU meters built in.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about vMix, they've kind of taken the approach that when I go live, I'm on air with my red button. Yeah. And so when you hit the stream button, it turns red. And a lot of people go, "Oh no, it turned red. What do I do?" And actually, that's actually a good thing. It's a bad thing when it turns orange or yellow.
Right.
So one of the features that is nice with vMix, and I know Wirecast, I'm not sure OBS has this or not, but it will let you know when you're trying to stream out at a bit rate that exceeds your network capability, or you're approaching your network capability limits.
Yeah, I don't think OBS has that, but vMix definitely has those. They're nice little features once you get used to them and you know what they're all about. But you can look at your PC and your desktop sources using vMix. I'm going to sneeze here. You got the window open, that's why. You can do, as we said earlier, they got some templates you can use. There's actually video delay. There's actually instant replay if you get the different version of vMix.
Oh, yeah. Which probably, the more expensive license, which is probably not a lot of instant replay going on in church.
I don't think so, unless the pastor does something crazy and you want to run it again. Slow motion.
Rewind that back.
But there are, there's definitely some real good capabilities, overlay channels, they say, and
that's their lower thirds piece.
So I think you just go to vmix.com.
Yep.
You can find out more about it and get involved. And you can download it and run it, as you said earlier, 60 days. I think the full version for 60 days. And then after 60 days, if you don't want to purchase it, you can still use it. It just doesn't have as many features. And
I think it's primarily constrained by resolutions that it's going to broadcast in. So the free version is going to be either a borderline HD or an SD resolution that you can stream with. But for only $60, it bumps you up into the HD, and $60 one time. Yeah. So it is a very capable encoder that at a very affordable price.
The basic HD is $60.
Yeah.
They have a $150 version SD, which I don't quite understand. I guess it's I don't know why it's $150. Well, you get a few more options, even though it's SD. I guess you can buy another one for $350, which is a higher resolution. There's even a $700 version. It's a really high resolution.
I think some of the constraints are the number of inputs potentially as well. So, but with the $60 version is 4 inputs or so. Is that right?
I'm looking here.
So, I mean, that's for most churches. That's typically most churches don't have more than 4 camera inputs.
But it goes all the way up to, depending on what you're trying to do. There's lots of options to it, and again, we like it. But when you start using something like vMix or Wirecast, you definitely want to make sure that you've got your computer's healthy enough and it's got enough RAM and
right. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize or recognize. So what the encoder is doing, it is re-encoding the video and sending it to the destination. So if I'm going to send to a couple of destinations, it's got to take that same video and re-encode it twice. So that's to do twice as much work. And if I want to go to 3 destinations, then it's 3 times as much work. So all happening at the same time. So you want to be careful to make sure that you don't overload your computer. And if you do run into a CPU loading issue, then the quickest way to relieve that load is to drop one of the streams that one of the destinations you're encoding to.
Yeah. Just since we're talking about requirements here, what they say, the minimum processor they say is 2 gigahertz dual core processor. That's the minimum.
That's an old processor, right?
Yeah, and they recommend, and I honestly wouldn't go with that. They recommend, what I would recommend too, if you can do it, would be an Intel Core i7 processor, 3 gigahertz plus. Memory 8 gigabytes. Again, this is what they're recommending. Solid state, which is always nice as far as the drive.
Especially if you're recording. So that's another encoding to your recording.
Yeah.
So and we recommend that you do record. So if you're sending a single stream, you're going to have 2 encodings going on. One for the stream, one for the recording.
Things have changed since the old days, but again, computers are less expensive now, and you can beef up your computer for less money, I think, than it used to be. So I think overall it's still a good choice and something that I think, we would certainly recommend for people.
Right.
And they have great help videos too. There's some really good videos. You can learn a lot about it by going to vMix and looking at their videos.
All right. I've not played much with their videos.
I haven't either, but I've looked at a few and I've noticed they've got a nice selection. So,
that's true. I just comes to mind this past weekend I was helping a customer with vMix, and we were really scratching our head why certain things weren't working, and found that once we quit out of vMix and relaunched it, everything worked fine. So that's the old Windows.
You're blaming that on Windows.
That's the old Windows thing, is if it doesn't work, then reboot your computer and see if it works the second time.
Well,
that usually fixes a lot of stuff.
That stuff does happen, and it's never a bad idea to reboot.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left here. We've covered OBS. We've talked about vMix here.
Yeah. And we've kind of mentioned to avoid Flash Media Live Encoder.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a video player that's HLS now, and with the whole issues with Flash, Chrome, the Chrome browsers and stuff, we would recommend you not use Flash Media Live Encoder unless you have a Mac or have a plug-in where you can run AAC audio, which is a different than MP3 audio format. So again, it will work in AAC audio format.
Yeah, it will work, and that was one of the tools that we recommended early on.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned, it's no longer supported, and finding more and more problems with people having it not recognizing video equipment, and
especially you're trying to do more of a HD, picture, and you're trying to do you're trying to make it match up with the equipment you have, the other hardware equipment. It doesn't like that very well.
Right.
Doesn't do well with
if your equipment is newer than 7 years old, then it didn't know it existed the last time it was updated.
Do we want to mention Wirecast here?
Sure. Let's just quickly go through Wirecast. Wirecast has kind of been the mainstay. They've been in the business the longest. They've been doing this quite a while. They have a really good product, and it too runs on both Mac and PC. They have a free trial version you can experiment with, but unlike the vMix free trial, it will put a watermark on the audio and the video.
Right.
Whereas the vMix will let you just stream and for 60 days, like the full version.
Right. Well, the audio on Wirecast, they'll pipe in somebody, some voice from Europe or something will come in and say, "This is Wirecast."
Yes, every 30 seconds or so.
So it's Wirecast. Just in case you forget,
yes.
It might be Wirecast. They will remind you.
It's encouraging you to go ahead and pay for it, which is it $450 or is it $495?
You say $450. I always say $495.
I think you're right, too.
I think I am.
I think you are.
I don't know. I have to look here.
Their price hasn't changed over several years. They do consistently update. They have all the capabilities of vMix and maybe some other things that, the primary things are going to be very similar to what vMix offers.
They do, and I've heard this before. I've never investigated it with Wirecast. It's made by Telestream, and they do have a discount pricing program for educational and nonprofit. Yeah. I've heard that, but I don't know what it is. So, and I don't know. I mean, church would obviously
be a nonprofit.
Qualify for nonprofit.
So I don't know. I don't think it was crazy discount, but
something there. So
something worth looking into.
Yeah.
But you can, if you want to play with it, install it. All of these you can install and decide on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going to work best for you.
Yeah. So there's other live encoders. We're out of time here, but there's some other live encoders. Steve mentioned them before. And there's hardware-based encoders. We have talked about this a few years ago on one of our other podcasts. You could look it up on iTunes, or we may visit the hardware-based encoders again down the road a ways. There's pros and cons to all these things. Hardware-based encoders means you don't have to have a computer, a PC, or a Mac running. And there are pros to that. And, it used to be, we talked about, what's the one we used to have at the church where we worked?
TriCaster.
TriCaster. And TriCaster is out there. That's the big gorilla. But there's these smaller boxes now that are available.
That will mount on your camera. Yeah.
Those kind of, there's other ones. We'll get to that later. So anyhow, if you have a question about live encoders, about streaming video, we're the guys to talk to. You can just send us an email, support@StreamingChurch.tv, because we want to support you. And it's support@StreamingChurch.tv. So we're out of time. Hope you've enjoyed this. We'd love your feedback on it. Maybe you may very well know some more things than we do, because if you're a church doing streaming video all the time and working with these things, you may have actually found a few more features that we might not be aware of, maybe. So we'd love to hear about it from you or your questions. Send us an email or visit our website, StreamingChurch.tv. Okay, we're done.
All right. Sounds great.
All right. He is Steve Lacy. I am Phil Thompson. We hope that you have a great day. This has been the Church Solutions Podcast. Take care.